which we are all collectively located during this meeting, is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Mississauga of the Credit, and the Anishinaabe people. Madam Clerk, the roll call, please.
All members of council are present, your worship.
There is no addendum this evening, but I've got a few announcements. I'm going to start with COVID-19. With the reopening of schools and fatigue setting in regarding the COVID-19 restrictions, now more than ever, we need to be vigilant in following best practices, health guidelines to prevent the spread of the virus. Wash your hands frequently, maintain a distance of at least 6 feet from others, and wear a mask when inside public places or in situations where physical distancing is not practical or likely. These measures, followed diligently, have allowed Fort Erie and Niagara to maintain relatively low numbers of infections since March this year. Although I note over the last 2 days in Niagara, there have been 12 new cases, which is significantly higher than it has been over the past little while. There are some who believe that the pandemic is over. That is wishful thinking. Numbers of infections in Fort Erie and Niagara have been gradually rising, suggestive of the risk attendant on the reopening of society, restaurants, and schools. Each and every one of us has an obligation to do what we can to protect others, family, neighbors, friends. Until a vaccine is available, the surest way to resume some semblance of normalcy in our community is to adhere to the health guidance and guidelines, respect others, and do your part to prevent the spread of COVID-19. I want to thank again everyone who is being diligent to make sure that they follow the health guidelines. And most especially, I wish to thank our frontline healthcare workers who continue to place themselves in harm's way on a daily basis and on whom we rely to help us in this time of great stress. Second item I wanted to make reference to is the border restrictions. I, along with 10 other Ontario border mayors, met electronically last week with the Minister of Security for Canada, Bill Blair, to discuss border restrictions between Canada and the United States. In that regard, I want to extend appreciation to Mayor Christian Provenzano of Sault Ste. Marie for arranging the meeting. The federal government closely monitors the situation at the border and the factors relevant to the state of COVID-19 in the United States. Because the situation changes from week to week, the government has determined that 30-day short-term reviews and extensions of border restrictions are most effective. This week, there will be another announcement regarding the restrictions beyond September the 21st, when the current restrictions are set to expire. In view of the continuing troubles in the United States in managing the pandemic, I would expect a continuation of those restrictions. The minister expressed a desire to continue to consult the border mayors as the situation unfolds, particularly taking advantage of our knowledge of the matters on the ground at our border crossings. He listened intently to all 11 mayors as we gave him a synopsis of what was occurring in our communities and what pressures are being felt by our residents and businesses. Our main message was that there needs to be a strategy for eventually moving beyond the border restrictions, one that lifts the restrictions gradually in a staged fashion and is attended by clear health and safety protocols that need to be communicated to the public well in advance. In that vein, the minister advised that the government is looking at protocols that could provide exemptions in due course with safety precautions front and center for family reunification and compassionate situations. But he made it clear that the opening of the border will be gradual, incremental, and probably in stages. I wanted to make a comment about Douglas Memorial Hospital. You will note that on this evening's agenda, there is a report outlining staff proposals for allocating the 2019 budget surplus. One of the recommendations relates to setting aside money for the possible repurposing of Douglas Memorial Hospital. This follows a very productive meeting that Joanne Ferricioli and I had with last month with the president of the Niagara Health System, Lynn Guerrero. We will be looking at opportunities to enhance healthcare services to the residents of Fort Erie in an innovative way with a variety of potential partners. We hope that this will be one more initiative that this council will undertake to ensure that our residents have the access to healthcare that they need and that they deserve. And finally, I wanted to extend my personal gratitude to Susan Jovanovich, who served as the adult advisor to the Mayor's Youth Advisory Committee over the past several years. While COVID-19 has put MIAC into hiatus since March this year, until that time, Susan was very effective in growing MIAC's numbers, encouraging our youth in a variety of endeavors, and helping to have the voice of youth heard at Town Hall. Thank you, Susan, for your dedication, commitment, time, and energy working with MIAC. I and the members are truly appreciative. That takes us then to declarations of pecuniary interest. Are there any? There being none, there is notice of one upcoming public meeting, which is the proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendment regarding 625 Garrison Road and 0 Helena Street, property owned by David Compson. The meeting will be held on October the 5th, 2020 at 6 p.m. via video teleconference. The information report will be available to the public on Wednesday, September the 30th. There are no public meetings scheduled for this evening, and that then takes us to the consent agenda. Does anyone wish either of the reports removed, any of the reports removed from the consent agenda? If not, can I have a mover for the recommendations in the consent agenda? Councillor Dubanow, seconded by, whoops, we don't need a seconder, we're in committee. Are there any questions or comments with respect to any of the reports in the consent agenda? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. Number CS13 2020, the 2019 annual financial report, and the recommendations of allocations of the surplus funds. I was somewhat disappointed not to see anything for infrastructure. I don't know about the other councillors, but the biggest concern I hear, one of the biggest concerns I hear, is the ditching and the roads being needing attention, and I don't see any money going, that surplus going towards that. And I would hope that when we do have a surplus, that roads and infrastructure like ditching be given some of the allocation. And I'm just somewhat disappointed to see that it's not in there. Now, I did not know about the Douglas Memorial. And so one of my suggestions was there is I wouldn't say a surplus, but there is a fairly large reserve already in that account. But now that you've explained the initiative for Douglas Memorial, of course, we'll 100% support that. But I am concerned that there's no money towards infrastructure for the roads and the ditching and the surplus.
I'll let Mr. Cookett respond to that, or should I go to Mr. Jansen?
No, I can start through your mayor to the councillor. We did talk about ditching and infrastructure and allocating some funds to both those roads and ditching. We held off on the ditching because we're waiting for a ditching master plan to be completed. Once that is complete, then we'll have a better idea of monies required. As far as the roads and addressing the issues required for the roads, we're going to address that through the 2021 budget and put more towards it for next year, and try to address some of those outstanding needs and get our PCI ratings where they should be. So I don't know if Mr. Jansen or Mr. Walsh would like to add anything to that.
Gentlemen, either? Councillor Noyes, back to you.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. I'm wondering, okay, we know that the master plan for the ditching is coming forward. How much money have we allocated for that master plan? Like, how much money is in the budget right now? Anything?
Mr. Cookett, do you know that, or I don't see Mr. Walsh?
I believe Mr. Jansen or Mr.
Oh, there he is.
Yep.
Mr. Jansen, do you want to take that question? The amount allocated for the master plan for ditching?
Yes, I'd have to go back to double check. Mr. Walsh may know, but I believe it was $200,000 that we set aside as a supplementary item. I can get back to you in a moment.
Mr. Walsh, would you know that, or should we stick with Mr. Jansen getting back to us in a moment?
You can stick with that. Just an update on that plan, though. We are bringing in a report to council on that master plan for November 9th.
I'm sorry, did you say October or November?
November 9th.
Thank you. Councillor Noyes, back to you.
Well, thank you for that information. I look forward to the ditching report. I know that listen, I can remember 15 to 20 years ago when people were asking about their ditches being done, and those ditches still haven't been done in the 15, 20 years. I think it's an area that I wouldn't say ignore, but it doesn't seem to take the priority that perhaps it needs to. And I always get this when the drainage comes to us and we have a drainage tribunal and all that, and we're asking the residents to spend, in some cases, 10,000, if not more, to have a municipal drain clean, but we're not even keeping our ditches clear. So anyway, so somewhat disappointed, but thank you.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, Councillor Noyes, and you're correct. Some of the ditches definitely need work. Mr. Jansen, you wanted to comment further? You have the number.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Yeah, I did go back and look in the 2019 budget through supplementary item 4.1. We added $200,000 for the rural ditching master plan. That year, we also did add an additional $85,000 for each year as base funding for the rural ditching program.
Okay. Any other questions with respect to the reports contained in the consent agenda? Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Just two quick comments with respect to PDS 40-2020. That's the building, the building permit statistic report that we receive quarterly. I was actually quite shocked at how strong of a quarter we had, considering that for a significant period of time that we couldn't issue any permits at all. So I think it just shows the strength of the quarter, how we were able to accomplish that despite the limitations we had. And with respect to CS 13-2020, I as I mentioned many times previously, I was a citizen member of the Fort Erie Waterfront Strategy Focus Group. So I'm actually pleased to see that we are setting aside some of the surplus for strategic property acquisition as it goes forward. I've been a big supporter of a public waterfront, and I'm glad to see that the town is putting some money away for that so we can further expand that. So just a quick comment on that. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Dubanow. Any other councillors? Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. I guess my question would go to Mr. Walsh on the report with the water meters, IS 33-2020. On page 2 of the report, it talks about Neptune is anticipating having the exchanges complete by the end of 2020, and I'm assuming that's for the commercial and institutional. And also, the beginning of that paragraph says that the the residential installation was completed in 2018. So where does that bring us now? Does it start all over now and have the meters met their life cycle? And now we start all over, or how does this work? Because it seems to me like by the end of this year, everything will be done.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. We are approaching the end of our complete replacement, which is great news. It allows us to track where our water is going much more accurately. There are a number of meters that are up for renewal in the coming years. My manager of water and wastewater services, Chris Pasaric, has put together a schedule you'll see in the upcoming capital budget where the money spent on meter replacements floats up and down. It's been fairly constant up to this point, but now it floats up and down. And that's based on life cycle renewals. So we are starting over with some of them. We have also been tracking the accuracy of meters we've been removing from the system so that we know the age of them and we can tell how much they've degraded. And that allows us to do a much more efficient replacement program in the future.
Councillor Lubberts.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Just wanted to compliment Carly Griffin on the reports that she did in the consent agenda. They were very well done. Please pass those on to her, Mr. Jansen. If there are no other questions, then I'm going to call the question on the reports in the consent agenda. All those in favor of the recommendations? None opposed. That is carried. That then takes us to planning and development services. And is that Councillor Zanko?
Yes, it's me, Your Worship.
Take it away.
Planning and Development Services is now in session. We do not have any presentations or delegations this evening. So that brings us to report PDS 11-2020, Proposed Official Plan and Zoning Bylaw Amendment 260, 262 Gorham Road and 3854 Disher Street. Can I get a mover for that, please? Oh, actually, that was moved already back in March 9th. So that report is on the floor for any questions or comments. Is there any? Councillor Butler, and then your worship, and then we'll go to you, Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a quick question with respect to whether or not this is going to come back for public input once again.
Ms. Dolch, could you comment on that?
Through you to the councillor. At this point, no. Once you accept the information report, we would move to the recommendation report. We've had a public meeting on the matter, and the public meeting was closed. Just to explain a bit further, there has been some changes to the recommendation report based on the comments from that last public meeting. In particular, the opening of Disher Street from the commercial drive-through, as well as the noise from the car wash. The car wash has been moved further towards the commercial building rather than to the residential.
Councillor Butler?
Yes, sorry, Madam Chair. A further question is, from what I'm seeing here, it looks like they actually incorporated that one house property that they own into this. Is that true? Am I seeing it correctly?
Ms. Dolch?
Through you to the councillor. Yes, originally, and it continues to incorporate the northern portion of that house property on Disher Street, 3854 Disher, into the commercial component. And that's part of the official plan amendment, where they're changing it from a residential designation to the commercial in the back half.
And Madam Chair, just one last question, and then I'll let the councillors ask a question. But with respect to noise barriers, I see that they are going to create a barrier, but it doesn't say anything about the decimal points in terms of creating, I'm sorry, I can't find the spot that I marked, in creating a stronger barrier between them and the neighbor that now they're going to be abutting to.
Ms. Dolch?
Through you to the councillor. Yes, they have, since they've modified their plan, they have updated their noise study as well. So that would be, the details of that would be coming forward in the recommendation report. But I have looked at it. It is well below the 50 dBA. I believe it's around 47 dBA. But there are some mitigation measures in terms of the noise wall along the property line, as well as the car wash doors need to be, there's special doors they're using that keep closed during the car wash.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Your worship?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Maybe the clerk can help me on this, but I think I'm understanding Ms. Dolch's position on this. We have an information report. We had a public meeting. Ordinarily, we would deal with the information report if the public meeting was closed, which it was. And then we would receive a recommendation report that would outline whatever comments have been made by the public and whatever changes the developer is prepared to make. And at that point, council then makes a decision on whether to approve the zoning change or not, and the OP amendment. Am I correct on that, Madam, through you, Madam Chair, to Ms. Dolch?
Through you to the mayor. Yes, that's correct. So that's usually the approach we take. In certain circumstances, we do go back to consult the public, but in this case, a lot of the items that were raised by the public were addressed through the changes that the developer is making.
So then my next question, Madam Chair, would be directed to the clerk, and that is, we had a number of people that addressed council at the public meeting or submitted, I think, written comments. either from the open house or at the meeting. Is it possible for us to direct that those individuals be given direct notice that this matter will be coming back for a recommendation report and that there have been significant changes made to the developer's proposal for the property?
That is something that council could direct staff to do. However, if those individuals wish to address council, they wouldn't be able to because the public meeting has been closed.
So, Madam Chair, my view on that is that if council decides that we would permit further delegations, we could do that by majority vote. So, Madam Clerk, any comments on that?
I don't have any concerns with that. If it's just a matter of waiving the rules, and if council votes the majority that that's what they would wish to do, then that's something they could contemplate doing.
That's somewhat the direction that I'm heading. I'm sensitive to the fact that there was a lot of public concern about this particular development. Those members on the Planning and Development Services Subcommittee have had a chance to see briefly the changes that the developer is proposing for this parcel, as of I, because I participated in the meeting. I think that many of the concerns of the public have been addressed. I think that there may still be some modest concerns, and I think I'd like to make sure that the people that express concerns at least have an opportunity to be made aware of the fact that there is a report coming forward next week. We may not have anyone that wants to provide further comment. There certainly wouldn't be any reason why an individual couldn't provide us with written comments in advance of next Monday's meeting, because I believe that's when the recommendation report will be coming forward. Is it next Monday?
Ms. Dolch?
Through you to the mayor, that's correct. That's our plan. We can postpone it if need be, but that was the plan.
I'd be prepared to support this on the understanding, or if necessary, on an amendment to the report to make sure that those who express concerns or participated in the public meeting or the open house are given direct notification that this matter is coming back for a recommendation report on September the 21st. So, Madam Chair, my question, I guess, would be to the clerk. Is that a direction that staff can follow, or should there be a formal motion regarding the notification?
Madam Clerk?
I think in this instance, it might be preferable to have it as an amendment, as an additional recommendation, so everyone is clear on exactly how this is going to go forward.
Okay, so then I would move, Madam Clerk, that we add to the recommendations a provision that all individuals who address council at the public meeting or provided comments to council either prior to the public meeting or at the open house be provided with direct notice that the recommendation report will be coming forward on September the 21st before council, September 21st, 2020, and that that report will be published in the public record by, is it next Thursday? Is it on Thursday that those are published?
It would be Thursday, yes.
So that would be my amendment.
Okay, that amendment's on the floor. Is there any questions or comments with regard to the amendment? Seeing none, all in favor? That amendment carries.
Thank you. That's it for me, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Noyes, did I see you had your hand up?
Yes, I did. Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, it goes on to the public meeting. I think we probably done a walk around that anyway, but I'm reading page 2 of 14, the third paragraph there. It does talk about a new public meeting is necessary as the agent has modified the proposed official plan amendment, area and zoning bylaw amendment from the original proposal that was brought forward in 2018. Am I misreading something? Am I missing something in here? Because that's basically, when I was reading it, if I was a public and I was keeping my eye open for when this report was coming, I would be reading this and thinking, oh, there's another public meeting coming. Am I missing something?
Ms. Dolch, can you comment on that?
On page 2, the third paragraph, under purpose.
Okay, sorry, so through to the counselor. That is explaining, yes, previously they modified their plan significantly, not as a result of public comment, but just modified their plan significantly to deal with some matters that they had, that staff had. Now they needed a new public meeting, and that was just an explanatory memo in this report when we went forward with the public meeting, which would have been the date of this report, which is March 9th. So when we went forward March 9th, that was the new public meeting based on changes they made previously.
Okay, that's not quite how the report reads, but that's okay. I'm wondering if there's any heads up to the owner that if this becomes problematic in regards to left-hand turns, like, I mean, I was on council when I was told that there wouldn't be a problem with the Tim Hortons. In Crystal Beach, it would not be a problem, you know, it's gonna be just fine. Well, it's anything but fine. And now we're going to be doing a left-hand turn off one of the busiest roads, off the same road, into a residential area. And I somehow want to put the owner on notice that if it does become problematic, that we can put a no left-hand turn here or something. I don't know if that's even possible, but I do not want to repeat of what happened in Crystal Beach. Unfortunately, that's what I see happening here. I'll go on record saying I hope I'm wrong, but I see that this is going to be problematic.
Ms. Golden, do you want to comment on that?
Through to the counselor, and I do appreciate your concerns. Obviously, the Tim Hortons has stacking for about 4, possibly 5. We require a minimum of 10. When you do see the new plan that's coming forward, that will come forward with the recommendation report, it has been reconfigured so that more stacking beyond the 10 would occur on their site rather than on our any roadway. So we have accommodated for even more than the required 10, which was a change since the original Tim Hortons came in, because we knew it was a problem. So we went to the 10. So all drive-throughs since that Tim Hortons was constructed way back has now incorporated 10 parking space or 10 stacking spaces, and we haven't had an issue since. I'm not going to say that it couldn't possibly be, but we've made sure that the stacking is going to occur on the site, not on our roadway, with the additional spots.
If I can, through you, Madam Chair, and I do appreciate the effort, and at some point you have to draw the line, but again, if it does become problematic, I do hope this council would consider a no left-hand turn lane to prevent the traffic mayhem that may arise. Again, we're into this COVID-19, the restaurants, if they get closed down again and everything becomes drive-through, 10 may not be enough. If you go to McDonald's now, they have now 2 lanes of drive-through, and they're still backed up, going through the drive-through lanes, because there's very few people going into the restaurant itself. So again, I just hope it doesn't become problematic, and if it is, we're going to probably have to address that because it's so close to the Friendship Trail. And there's another development happening across the street. I just see this as being a problem in the future. We have to just be prepared to do something if it becomes a problem. That's all. Thank you.
Are there any other councillors that have comments or questions? Seeing none, I will call the question on this report as amended. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. That brings us to PDS 39-2020, intent to amend Schedule A of bylaw number 135-99, being a bylaw to designate lands at 477 Ridge Road North. Can I get a mover? Councillor McDermott. That report is on the floor. Are there any comments or questions? Your worship, and then I'll go to you, Councillor
Noyes, go first.
Okay, I seen your hand first, but we can do that. Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm somewhat disappointed to see that the historical features are gone. I actually did have an opportunity many years ago to look at this establishment and see the ceilings and the historical thing. And it is quite a shame that these things are now lost. And I don't know if we're ever going to get to the bottom of it, but it really was something to be seen. There was a good reason why I had the historical designation. And with that historical designation, I think there comes a bit of a tax break. And it's just unfortunate. That's all. Thank you.
Your worship, and then Councillor Lubberts.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't mean to cut off Councillor Lubberts, but this situation to me is not acceptable. And I'm going to ask that the report be deferred until such time as the owner comes to a council meeting, hopefully the first council and committee meeting next month, to explain why the property was permitted to be to deteriorate to the extent that it did, and what has happened to the ancient flooring, the tin roof, some of the molding, some of the baseboards, and the banister, and whatever else may have gone out of that property. Because I don't think that this is a situation where we should easily or de-designate a property without some explanation as to how this has occurred. This is a license. I circulated a memo to the councillors. You know my feelings about this. I'm just very uncomfortable about the whole situation. So I'm moving that it be deferred until the first council meeting in October, which the clerk could advise us, so that the owner, who hasn't been identified in the body, and I understand it's someone named Robert Long, can appear to address council on any questions that we may have with respect to this property.
Okay, Madam Clerk, do you know what that date is?
That would be October 5th.
Okay. Okay, that is on the floor. Does any councillor have any questions with regard to the date that the report is deferred to? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? That passes. And that brings us now to the business status report, or sorry, items of new business. Does any member of council have any inquiries or new business? Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a bit of a strange one, I think. And I'm assuming it's going to go under planning and development because it deals with a public meeting that we had through Zoom. I've been told that someone was charged $30 on their telephone bill or whatever for joining the Zoom meeting, or around $30. And she was surprised to get that bill. I see the strange looks on people's faces, and I said, well, no, they're supposed to be free. And she said she was given a number of numbers that she could dial in for the Zoom, and she just picked one. And she was subsequently charged $30 for the privilege of joining the Zoom meeting. I'm not an IT guy. I don't know why she was charged. She did come to one of the Zoom meetings. We did hear from her. And I don't know what we do in this circumstance. Or how do we prevent people from being charged if they want to join a Zoom meeting? I'm lost, so I don't know. I've never heard about somebody being charged $30 for joining a Zoom meeting.
It sounds like she may have joined for a subscription to Zoom rather than use the free. But Mr. Cookett, did you want to comment on what options the resident might have?
This is interesting. I haven't heard of this. The only thing I can think of is, yes, you're right. She actually did purchase Zoom. The other is sometimes when you're given invites to Zoom meetings, you're given a bunch of phone numbers and you have to pick the one which pertains to your area. And if she picked one that isn't, it would have been considered more or less a long distance call.
That's exactly what it was, yeah.
Yeah, so that's the issue. I see Mr. Davis has joined us. I don't know if we can make a correction in the future so those other numbers cannot be utilized. And then that mistake is not making. Mr. Davis, do you want to jump in here? And
yeah, I don't know the exact circumstances, but it does sound like there was a long distance call made And I believe Councillor Noyes is correct in saying that they probably did choose a number to dial in on. And that number subsequently was a long distance call for them. So we do usually push out Canadian numbers. They're not toll free, but there are times when there are American numbers on there too. But we try to limit it to Canadian numbers. I'm not sure what the rate is.
Okay, Councillor Noyes, thank you.
So under these circumstances, like, I mean, to be perfectly honest, the resident really isn't complaining. She brought it up to me and I thought, well, that's really not fair. And it was, she says, I was charged a long distance telephone call. And I was really surprised when I got my bill. And I'm thinking, well, we have to, you know, we can't have people who want to join council meetings or join in through Zoom being charged. I mean, that's not the purpose, right? I don't know if she would be hesitant to join again or whatever, but whether, I didn't even know this was possible that she could be charged, but somehow an educational, to let the public know what number they should be calling. So this doesn't happen again. Or what did we do in this circumstance? If she submits her bill, can she be reimbursed? She's not asking for it, to be perfectly honest. She was just, you know, kind of like, did you know I was charged $30 when I attended a public meeting? I think I'll leave it in Kelly, in your hands, and perhaps you can come up with a solution in regards to that, so this doesn't happen again. But people shouldn't be charged to come into our meetings.
Great. Your worship?
I mean, I think a simple solution is to make sure that when we publish the agenda, it's clear what number people should call or what the coordinates are for them to join us via Zoom so that they don't get charged. But I would have thought that was part of our package in any event.
Mr. Davis, did you want to maybe comment on that?
Sure. Through you, Madam Chair. The package that we have promotes the video side, and they do provide those numbers, and they're not toll free. I believe there is a separate add-on that we can push out that would give us like the equivalent of an 800 number. I just have to look into that.
I think that would be helpful because I think we all agree that we want to encourage residents to participate, not feel that it's too expensive for them. I did have a substantive question though. In the last report that we dealt with, that we deferred, makes reference to the fact that the municipality can pass a heritage property standards bylaw. And I'm just wondering, Madam Clerk, through you to Ms. Dolch, how we would go about doing that, because I don't want to be faced with this particular predicament again in the future. We don't have a lot of good heritage properties, and it would be a shame for us to face the same predicament.
Ms. Dolch, did you want to comment on that?
The Mayor, with the Heritage Property Standards Bylaw, Council could request a report. We could provide you with the information, and then the subsequent bylaw that would be passed.
So, Madam Chair, because this arises out of a report on our agenda, and the clerk can correct me if I'm wrong, can I move this evening that we request a report from staff with respect to the preparation and implementation of a heritage property standards bylaw?
Madam Clerk?
Yes, through you, Chair. Yes, that's absolutely right. You're under new business. You would need to vote on it, majority vote. That would be the way to approach it.
Well, I'd like to move that, Madam Chair.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments from other councillors? Councillor Dubanow?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, I'm fully in support of this. We actually discussed a little bit of this during the planning subcommittee meeting last week. It's a real shame to see stuff like this happen. It's been a problem in other municipalities where speculators have purchased these properties, allowed them intentionally to deteriorate for the purpose of then getting a demolition permit, potentially severing the property and then flipping it for a profit. And I think we need to protect these heritage properties, ensure that they're available for ourselves to enjoy, our children to enjoy, and connect us to the history of Fort Erie. So I'm fully in support of this, and I look forward to voting in favor of it.
Any other comments? Councillor Lubberts, and then Councillor Noyes.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. I just want to say, Mayor Redekop, you must have been reading my mind earlier. You
I
apologize.
don't even want to go there. I really don't even want to go there.
Yeah, well, sometime you might want to get in there one day.
Not really.
Anyway, that's exactly what I was going to bring up earlier when you deferred that's exactly what I'd like to see. So I support this, and hopefully the standing committee can discuss it and have some input as well.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is the designation for historical designation still voluntary? Like, in other words, if I owned a house that I thought was required, or met the criteria for a designation, I would have to be willing to allow the designation, right? Is that
Ms. Walsh, could you confirm that?
Here to the councillor, that's correct. Our program right now is a voluntary program.
So, and I'm in support of the motion, don't get me wrong, but I think we have to be somewhat careful, since it is voluntary, that we don't actually discourage people, because they're more worried about the consequences if they allow their property to be designated, and perhaps the penalty if things are let go. I think there's going to have to be a balance there, that you're not creating a disincentive for these historical properties to be retained and maintained. So I'm just throwing that out there when you're coming up with the policy. It's a double-edged sword. Thank you.
Councillor Butler.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Yeah, I agree with Councillor Noyes, and I fully support the mayor's motion. I believe there should be a penalty as well if it is designated a heritage home and then it's stripped. There's a lack of respect there for, the township and the people that that want to see that property. So I'm fully supportive of it. Thanks.
Okay. Any other comments? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? Well, that carries. Are there any other items of new business or inquiries? Seeing none, that brings us to the business status report. Any questions or comments regarding the report? Seeing none, I will hand the chair back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Councillor Zanko, and that takes us to infrastructure services. And is that Councillor Noyes?
Yes, it is.
Please proceed.
Okay. Infrastructure services is now in session. There are no presentations or delegations. There are no reports. So it brings us new business inquiries. Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wondered if we could get a status update from the director with respect to the boardwalk for Bernard Beach. The plans, the drawings, when that's going to be posted. Sorry.
I think perhaps Mr. Walsh, would you be able to answer that, or would it be Kira?
No, that's me.
Okay.
I don't have that answer for you right now. I'll talk to Mr. Hutton tomorrow and get better timelines and provide an update to council.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Mayor Redekop, you had a question?
Yeah, I had two items. The first one had to do with the Port Colborne quarry and the information that we received, which I shared with Mr. Walsh, maybe on the weekend. Once again, our staff responding to emails that I irresponsibly sent out on the weekend, not necessarily expecting a response, but they're right on top of it. And I think it's important for the public to be aware of that our staff.
You're on mute.
Virtually at all hours of the day. So in terms of the Port Colborne quarry and the efforts to fill that, we received some information about some fill that looks like it's illegal, shouldn't be put into the quarry. What are we doing to monitor that? Because I know that Councillor Dubanow had brought forward a motion, which we passed several months ago, because of our concern about the aquifer, which extends well into and beyond Fort Erie.
So through you, Councillor Noyes, right now we're just monitoring the actions. When the Ministry of Natural Resources, Ministry of the Environment, Climate Change, and Parks respond formally to Port Colborne's request, there will be an opportunity for stakeholders to comment on that. At that time, we will review the documents either internally or through a hired consultant with expertise to determine the effects on Port Colborne and make comment at that time.
Madam Chair, if I might, just to follow up on that, can we ascertain from the city of Port Colborne what, if any, fill is being permitted into that pit? I think it's pit 1, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mr. Walsh?
Through you, Madam Chair, we can ask. I don't know if they'll give us the answer.
Well, we're stakeholders in the sense that we are stewards for the people of Fort Erie, a number of whom have a need for access to the aquifer. So I think it should be made clear to them that our position is that we don't want anything that's going to jeopardize that aquifer to take place. The second question I had, and I'm sure any councillor that has boundaries on Lake Erie will be familiar with this. We got a complaint about ATVs on the beach again. In the past, we've had complaints about trucks, pickup trucks on the beach. Hard to believe, but I presume that what we would do, Madam Chair, is direct these complaints to the police because they're trespass. We have erected signs at a number of the waterfront access points and beaches to indicate what is private property as opposed to what is public property. Some people still think that it's appropriate to ride these vehicles on beaches and in parks, which they're not. Any suggestions or advice from our senior staff on this?
Mr. Walsh?
Madam Chair, unfortunately, if we don't catch them in the act, we're sort of snookered. We do have communications with the police, as you know, on a fairly regular basis. Bylaw enforcement has done yeoman's work this summer, patrolling our beaches and some of our trails. But I'll go back to the original statement. There's really not much we can do unless we catch them in the act.
I wonder if we can at least in the interim, Madam Chair, get our communications coordinator to maybe put something on our website and on our social media, just to remind people what the rules are with respect to our parks and beaches. You know, many people use them. They're very responsible. Even people walking on the beach are quite responsible, but there are those who tend to not know the rules, or if they know the rules, they're not adhering to them. So maybe we could just provide a refresher.
Filch? Ms. Filch?
Thank you. Sorry, if I can just add in as well. So council approved a vehicle barrier budget for each of the beaches. And we are looking at that this fall. Ms. Hansen's looking at putting that RFP. I know in certain instances, we had a discussion about Colony Road. She's looking at putting some vehicle barriers there to help assist minimizing those ATVs going up and down the beaches and things like that. So that should be coming forward. Whether it'll happen this year or early next, it'll depend on the proposals we get, sorry.
Right. So just for clarification, those would be barriers that would be near the entrance to the beaches. Is that correct?
Ms. Filch?
Through you to the mayor, that's correct.
Okay. And that would in the future, I think, help us if we run into another situation like this year where we have to try to restrict access to the beaches. That could assist us as well. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Butler. You're on mute.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just to the mayor's point, there are barriers already put up at Windmill Point Beach, and those barriers are working really quite well to deter cars from going there, obviously. But the ATV access still is problematic because they've found a way to get around it. So maybe when you are looking at the rest of the points, you might want to take that into consideration, that they have been able to maneuver around.
See Mrs. Dole shaking her head. Yes, she would.
Yes. Yeah.
Please.
And then if I may, Madam Chair, just one point to recognize what the mayor had stated with respect to the aquifers. I just wanted to add to that. There is a really big concern with the residents of Port Erie, because if you were to look at the amount of wells on a map, the residents of Port Erie outweigh the ones in Port Colborne. And since the aquifers trickle to the to our side of the line, we have a big stake in what happens here. So I just wanted to echo those comments. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Anything further from Councillor Dubanow?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just to touch on something that the mayor had mentioned earlier about vehicle access, and Councillor Butler had brought this up a couple of meetings ago with regard to the Friendship Trail. I'm actually very surprised at how many motorized vehicles use that trail. I cycle up and down it regularly between here and Point Avenue, and almost every afternoon or evening that I go out, I either see an ATV, I've seen motorcycles, e-bikes are a regular daily occurrence. I've golf carts, typically around Windmill Point Park, golf carts all the time. I appreciate what Mr. Walsh said about being snookered until we catch him in the act. I think I may invest in a helmet-mounted cam and help out that effort, because it is getting very frustrating for the safety of our residents who are engaging in active transportation, things to keep them healthy and keep them active, and they have to worry about getting plowed down by a motorcycle on a pathway that's designed for, passive, people-powered transportation. So I appreciate the mayor bringing this up, and Councillor Butler previously. I personally have seen it, and I'm getting frustrated by it. And just quickly to, if I may, Madam Chair, just to touch on the issue of the Port Colborne aquifer. When I prepared that motion, I went through and I was actually able to access the province's well information database, and I don't have the number off the top of my head, but it was a 4-figure number of active wells right now. I think we had tens of thousands active at one point in the past. And we had a significantly higher number of active wells in Fort Erie right now than even Port Colborne did. And with the way the geography is and with the way things flow, this is definitely a concern for Fort Erie. And it's something we need to keep on top of. I had heard about, I think it was like some concrete or other construction related materials had been dropped in there. I don't know the details of what may have happened between Port Colborne and whoever was involved in that, but I think it's important we keep an eye on it, because this does definitely affect our residents. And thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Dubanow. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, I do have one. I don't have the answer to. Bay Beach. Do you still need passes to access Bay Beach now that the summer is over?
Madam Chair, you need a pass until September 30th, I believe.
Okay, are those passes still available?
We've terminated open pass giveaways, but if a resident contacts customer service, we can arrange to get them a pass.
And are the bathrooms open?
Yes.
Thank you. Any further inquiries? Seeing none?
Councillor Lubberts. Councillor Lubberts.
Councillor Lubberts. There, okay.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just to go back on the vehicles on the beach, I'm just wondering if Ms. Dole can enlighten me a little bit. I spoke with our clerk, this is going back a few years ago, and there was some complaints down at the end of Prospect Point Road. That road, I think, is designated for access to launching access. And there's a couple other road allowances, I think, that allow for launching. And I'm just wondering if we're going to be putting barriers up, is that going to affect what we, the rules that we have in place for these road allowances?
Ms. Dole?
Through you to the counselor. In those instances where we allow launching, no, we wouldn't put up those barriers because we want to encourage vehicular access to launch boats and other things. So we wouldn't do that. But in other instances, we do try to minimize it, especially in places, as I mentioned, like Colony Road, where we want to avoid the ATVs and things like that going down into the beachlands.
Councillor Lubberts, anything further?
No, that's fine, thanks.
Thank you. That brings us to the business status report. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, infrastructure services is now closed, and I turn the chair back over to the mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Noyes. That takes us to corporate and community services. Councillor McDermott.
Thank you, Your Worship. Corporate and community services are now in session. We do have a presentation and delegation tonight. Mr. Sean Bayless, Chief Executive Officer of Pathstone Mental Health. Funding request for a walk-in medical health clinic for youth in Fort Erie. Report number CAO 16-2020. Mr. Bayless, the floor is yours.
Great, thanks so much. Well, I hope Jackie pushed the right button or dialed the right number so I don't get a bill for $30 on my line there, but we'll look after that if it does. And we'll know next time because the next package will come out with the right number there so it makes it easy access. I really like your efficiency there as a council. As you know that, many of us who went to school with regards to learning about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I think COVID has really thrown this thing into a real issue for us because when we see job loss, we see fear of safety and a lack of social connectedness. These are three main ingredients that when that gets impacted, it impacts the emotional well-being of people in general. And I know that all of us have gone through family matters that have been impacted by COVID in a very big way. And even my family has been hit very hard, both on a psychiatric level with one of my children and also with my mom who went into a hospital we weren't able to see for several months. And it does create the stress. So basically, that's my interlude to basically, as we know that, and are you going to be clearing the pages? This is Jackie here. She's my executive assistant.
Hello.
So we'll go to simple facts. So basically, we know that 1 in 5 children are impacted by mental health issues at any given time. We know that's going to increase because of the circumstances that have occurred. And we know that 70% of most mental health issues stem from childhood. So I'm not just concerned about the present state of where things are going. And one of the things that I do know from dealing with a lot of trauma in people's lives, particularly when I worked with the firefighter department, and this would be when I was working with Fort Erie way back when as your EAP provider, we know that if there's an incident where a person has a trauma for the incident that happens over the course of a couple hours, it's very different from someone who is in a prolonged state of being in trauma. And I think that we can consider the COVID as how it's impacted our youth has been very significant due to them having to deal with all the changes that have happened so quickly with regards to having to wear a mask, not being able to socialize, going into stores where they have to wear something that's different, basically being out of school for a prolonged period of time and now having to make the adjustment of going to school. And you can all feel that general anxiety that most of us have experienced because of not the uncertainty of how this is going to impact us. So consequently, one of the things that we do know is that with the suicide rate, it's the 3rd largest for youth in Canada. Niagara, it's 1 person every 7 days. The good news for us in Niagara, which I think that has one of the emphasis that I have done when I took on the job here at Pathstone, was how do we get people access to treatment and care? And I can say for now is that over the past 2 years, we have not had it recorded by the police that has been connected to a suicide. And I think that's really good news in that part of it. So I think that that's a significant change that's happened with that part. Secondly, who we are, basically Pathstone continues to have 17 programs that are available for their community. and lends itself to where we have a residential treatment center down in Niagara Falls as well. And most of the issues that we're dealing with children is anxiety, depression, self-harm, and suicide, and dealing with all forms of crises. And we've been trying to move past those core services throughout to the communities, both in the south end and also the north end, but particularly the south, because there is a dearth of resources in your area. And so we do have a school in Niagara Falls, or sorry, we have a school in Welland, and we have about 6 classrooms there for children who need mental health support. And we have a 10-bed live-in in Niagara Falls. And the reasons with the walk-in clinic was, how do we begin to spread the tentacles out of treatment and care where kids can have access in a quick fashion. One of the silver linings of COVID has it expedited one of our strategic plan directives, was to have it so that we would be able to provide virtual or video counseling. And we had planned it was going to take 15 months to kind of get that engaged over the course of starting from about 7 months ago. When COVID happened, we realized this was a priority. And so we developed a committee that basically moved on it. And within 2 months' time, we had virtual access, because we closed up their work sites in March 17th as the directive from the province. And one of the things that we did, that the moment that we closed our the work sites, that we kept the telephonic counseling available, but within 2 months we had the virtual counseling that was available. That within the moment we closed was the moment we began a re-entry plan. And I'm glad to say that when the ministry opened up the work sites for essential services like ours, we had ours open within about a week's time. And so in June 1st, we were probably the first agency who opened in the children's mental health that ended up beginning to start doing in-person counseling. So we're very glad and pleased how we were able to be leading edge that way. We served over 7,000 children, and we've had approximately 132 came to us through our walk-in clinic. That's a huge game changer, because basically people were getting access to counseling. And what we found was that some only need 1 session, some may needed 3 sessions, and they were able to shore up the issue right then, instead of waiting 3 to 5 months to get in, where they would have had to bump it up and need more intensive services. So the walk-ins have played a huge role. And also, just to kind of give you a stat, is that there was 67 calls where suicide was being considered by our youth, and still we remain 0 reported sudden deaths or suicide among that age group in the past couple of years, and particularly this year. The Here and Now walk-in clinics are now all open, even though we didn't have it, because the sites that we have are sometimes publicly funded, so we weren't able to get in. But what we did do was we gave tremendous amount of promotion with regards to that telephonic counseling. But then once we got these virtual up and running, they were able to provide that. And we are continuing to have virtual counseling 5 days a week in Fort Erie and every other walk-in clinic, so people can use that system. And now that we've got the walk-in working at Fort Erie, they can also have that in service. And I hope that people understand that virtual walk-in in itself is not the be-all and end-all. It can work for a period of time for a number of clients, but our clients are the ones that are more under the intensive. They need to have that face-to-face, that personal touch as well. And it continues to be a service that will be free. And what we've already seen from these clinics is this, is that sometimes when they visit, they only need 1 session. The first timers, it's their opportunity to get connected with a counselor. They feel safe to being able to move into that. And currently on our way, we have some of our currently are on wait list for full therapy. What we did find right now is that a number of our community partners who look after some of the children weren't able to open up as robustly as we were. So we're having to take on more of those clients. That has increased our wait list with 3 services at this particular time. So in the past 12 months, over 1,300 of our 7,000 clients have come through our walk-in clinic, which shows you the signs of the times that this is where young people want to connect with as a first kind of touch point. So I'm going to go to the cost of the operations, and basically what we have is 5 days per week at St. Catharines It costs about $203,414. This is outside of our budget. So this is where our foundation and fundraising has been helpful in that area. And then the additional single-day walk-in clinics is located, as you can see on the slide. It's a combined cost of $150,000 and $220. And again, it's been enhanced by video counseling as well. So what we proposed, or what I proposed to Fort Erie, was about the $20,000 annually. And what I'm really attempting to do, and I think for those who know me, is I'm pretty accurate with regards to when I can see things shifting to where I would like to see this as part of our core budget at Pastone. That walk-in clinics is going to be something that will be covered through the ministry by new funding that will be coming in, or what we may be doing is, because the goal was that we believe that if people got access to a walk-in service and could deal with it immediately, it would be those people who are on wait lists would become more intensive, and then we'd have to have people getting counseling through intensive service. So what we're doing now is that because these people were believing that the intensive, there won't be the same need for counselors that end, because we're getting it by the prevention and catching them at the moment of the crises, that lends itself that we'll be able to save money that way. The other piece that I will also be doing, that my goal is within the 2 years, is that we will have an opportunity where monies that from a counseling program that we have, where we begin to shore up, we'll move that money over to walk-in, because I believe that walk-in is probably going to be one of the most important programs in the future with regards to shoring up the issues that most areas have huge wait lists, and they still have wait lists in most children's mental health agencies across Ontario of approximately 6 months or more. And we've got ours down to where our walk-in, because of the walk-in and other programs that we've done, is we only have the brief program. It's about basically 12 to 20 weeks of wait time. But most of the programs we're keeping up, but there's that pressure that's there. And that is the goal that I'm looking at with regards to the future of positioning our walk-in clinics. So I think I've covered most of the things, what I want to talk to you about in terms of giving the highlights. I do, and I remember I spoke to Mayor Redekop with regards to what I want to eventually see is we need to move the core services of intensive particularly and brief down into Fort Erie specific. Now we've got a walk-in clinic there in Port Colborne. My next move will be to move so that there's core services in Welland and Niagara Falls in the next year, so that basically those that are in Port Colborne and Fort Erie will be able to have access to core services of intensive and brief services on an individual basis. And so therefore that's how I'm doing that rippling effect out, so that we will have an equity approach to doing counseling for all our community in Niagara. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Bayless, for your presentation and the important work that you're doing in Niagara with our youth. Are there any questions from council? Your worship.
Yeah, I'd like to thank Mr. Bayless for coming out this evening to address us and provide us with this background and a bit of a report on how the walk-in clinic has worked here and elsewhere. Certainly a major area of concern for all of us. There was a recent, and Mr. Bayless did make reference to efforts to secure long-term funding from the province. There was a recent funding announcement by the Premier with respect to mental health and addiction services. I don't know whether any of that money might find its way into this type of program or not.
Yeah, so what will happen is that money will get directed, and we won't know how much specifically, to the lead agencies consortium. That I am part of that. There's about 33 of us, and they will get a certain portion of that money that they described in mental health and addiction to the children's sector specifically. Then what happens is that they will look at us providing what recommendations as to where that money needs to go, and then we can then allot that money to that budget line, what it may be specific. Walk-in clinics are becoming more popular with regards to children's mental health, but it's not seen as kind of the be-all priority. They're looking at the wait list of other intensive and brief programs. And so consequently, sometimes it lends itself to where they stage it so that it's restricted to do money outside those areas they feel that's important. What I can share with you is that I will be looking at ways of redirecting monies where I can and I have that flexibility to these walk-in clinics so that they will all be covered throughout Niagara as part of our core services in all the Niagara.
Thank you. And one other question, if I might, Mr. Chair, and that is, Mr. Bayless, if there are things that the town of Fort Erie can do to assist you to secure that sustainable funding for the core services, please let us know, because we would like to we'd like to be helpful.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. You know, I've always appreciated your heartfelt and the space that you hold for supporting the community in different ways. And when I resonate very much with your value system, and I know that if I do need some assistance from the political side of the arena, that I know that I can call upon you. And with you making that offer, don't be surprised over the next little while that I may connect with you with regards to providing some sort of support or a letter or something of that nature. And I will call it if I feel it will be helpful.
That's good. We'd be more than happy to do that. And the good news for you is that there's a whole council here that's very committed to our community and the needs of our residents. So thank you very much, Mr. Bayless. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Dubanow?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to Mr. Bayless. Thank you so much for all of the work your organization is doing right now, particularly with COVID. It's really thrown mental health, particularly among youth, for a loop. I think it was back in August, there was a CDC report that 25% of American youth have actually considered ending their own life because of what we're going through with COVID right now. So I think organizations like yours are particularly important. And going to that question, during your presentation, you had mentioned that you had fielded 67 calls, and thankfully the Niagara Regional Police have not actually had a call about a suicide. I think I heard that right. I'm just wondering if you can perhaps contextualize this for us. Are you guys seeing that same increase in demand? You mentioned it, but I'm just wondering what would a typical year be like versus a year now? Do you find it's consistent? Do you see a marked increase? I'm just curious, with all the mental health stress that we're going through right now, what your organization is seeing right now.
Good question. So typically what we have is that every year we increase our numbers of new clients by 20%. So we're on stage for the same amount. We're up to 7,000 this year, as I mentioned earlier. It would not surprise me that, well, let me go back just slightly. I think when COVID came out, there was a surreal experience of it. I think everything was kind of put on pause because of the newness of it. But now it's becoming more wearing and it's being prolonged. It's going to lend itself that I will not be surprised if we see a significant spike over the next 3 months. Because basically when the surreal experience took place between March and June, that was like, if this is really real, like what's going to happen? It was like the families became connected and working with each other. Through the summer, it was kind of typical of what summer took place with regards to being on vacation. Parents already had ways of being able to look after their children. But September to December is always the months where the stress factors and anxiety go up with children and parents particularly as well. And consequently, it's these next 3 months I'm really concerned about the spiking that's going to occur, and then seeing the numbers significantly increase even in February, January, February, March as well. So I really can't share with you what those numbers are going to look like, but I would not be surprised, as I've said, there is going to be some form of increase and enhancement of the spike nature that you're expressing in terms of what you think may be happening probably as well.
And if I can just, Mr. Chair, really quickly, thank you very much for everything you're doing. I'm a parent myself. I know what I'm dealing with my son right now and some of the anxiety related issues primarily fueled by COVID. thank you so much for everything you do. Keep up the good work and everything that you're doing for our community. It's very important, and glad to have you here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say that information just scared me. So I have to tell you that, you know, I know it's very important for us to create a safe environment for our residents so that they feel supported. But I'm starting to think after that last statement that you made, that $20,000 is not nearly enough. And so I'm just wondering if you could tell me if there are not enough mental health professionals in Niagara available to us, or do we need to attract more?
The question is, if you look from a historical perspective, what happened to Niagara was that when money was being doled out by the provincial government, there was this imaginary line around Hamilton that funding did not get to Niagara percentage-wise based on representation by population. And that had been going on for 20 years or more. And consequently, what took place was we are now dealing with, I'm talking about even before COVID, if you look at our unemployment numbers, our poverty, our mental health issues, we're way over the top compared to most other areas, and our suicide rate and things of that nature. And so it's been a disproportionate amount of funding that lent itself to where we couldn't hire because we didn't have within our budget. And therefore, that's why I believe that lead agencies where we've got established, we can now push for that through the consortium of more equal distribution of funding. There's not difficult to hire social workers. That's never a challenge here in this area. It's more the area of having the funding to be able to hire them is the particular issue. What I can say is that the therapists that we do have in Niagara, both on the adult and the children's side, are very good at what they do. When you look at the evaluations and the self-reporting of self-satisfaction surveys, it comes out very, very positive that the experience was in the 90% rate. So that is really has been the issue. And that's why, again, I've moved towards a walk-in clinic. I've moved into developing clinics where we have several parents being able to be psychoeducational about how to cope with their kids. And that's the major reasons why our wait times have gone down. And I am hoping, I touch wood, is that hopefully we'll be able to keep that zero stat continuing over the next years, because all the work that we have done has helped that. And I don't want people to start that, well, I guess we've solved the problem. No, it's because of the prevention and because of us getting them opportunity to access treatment is what's impacting that we're not having these tragedies. Though we still need that funding to be able to increase the number of counselors for us to keep up with it, because there's a point where with the 20% increase over the past 3 years, we've been able to modify our programs to be able to have people have access. But if the 20% keeps going and I don't get the number of counselors, there's no more avenues of expanding or capacity building without having more counselors. So that's my great concern right now in the future.
Yeah, that's my concern now too. So thank you for bringing that to our attention, because we have miles to go, in my opinion. It's a nice, just nice starting point, but it's certainly it needs to be broadened for sure. Thank you.
Another thing that may be of interest to all of you is that we are very much engaged with the Board of Education with regards to the mental health leads. And what the educational ministry has been putting more funding into schools to hire more school social workers. And because we're lead agency, we are moving and, well, it's not moving, we are engaged with them in terms of developing that connectedness, that collaborative relationship, so that we're able to provide and support them with the services they're getting, and those that are above the threshold of the work that they can do as counselors, to making sure they streamline them right into our place so that we can provide that counseling that they need. So from a community perspective, we're really engaging with those key stakeholders that will make a difference with our kids getting access to care, whether it's from the school board to family health teams to CHCs. So there's some really good work that you would not see, but is happening in a very positive way with regards to us having a more seamless approach to the care pathway to get them into care.
Mr. Chair, just one last question. I apologize. If we were to double the, like, through fundraising, not saying that the town is going to commit to $40,000, but if we were to double that ask of $20,000, would that create a second day in Fort Erie?
Yes, that would happen. And I think we need to base it on statistics though. Like, I mean, we got to see that that demand is there. And what we can do is that once our person's working that full amount of hours to the extreme, therefore you feel pressured, that's when we would introduce that. But I wouldn't do that beforehand because I want to be very respectful of the monies that have already been given for that service. And if I felt that by number, statistically data driven, that Fort Erie would benefit from another counselor working another day, then I'd be one of the first ones to connect with you on that.
Yeah, sorry, it just provoked another question. I apologize, Mr. Chair, but just further to your point, the private therapy runs well over $200 now per session per hour. So something like this is really meaningful to a lot of individuals that can't afford that process. So I think that you're going to be influxed, and I think that we should be prepared to move forward for a second day, whatever it takes. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any more questions of Mr. Bayless? Well, thank you for your presentation, and we'll be done with your report very shortly.
Good, and I thank you for your interest and your engagement with this serious problem and helping resolve and remedy it as well.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
So we'll move on to reports. We'll begin with CAO-16 2020, funding request for Pastone Walk-in Mental Health Clinic for youth in Fort Erie. I'll read the recommendation. The council approves the request in the amount of $20,000 for a second year of funding for Pastone Mental Health to continue to service a walk-in clinic for mental health for youth in Fort Erie. And further, that council amends the 2020 operating budget to provide grant funding to Pastone Mental Health in the amount of $20,000 with funding from the Community Health and Wellness Reserve. Moved by Councillor Zanko. Comments and questions? Councillor Zanko.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say I didn't have a question after the presentation. It was a really great presentation. I'm happy to support this. I think Pastone does a tremendous job for the community and for mental health. So there's no question in my mind. I'm fully behind this. And I did want to just thank the presenters. I didn't have a question, so I wasn't able to say this after your presentation.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further comments or questions? Councillor Noyes. Unmute there.
Thank you, Councillor McDermott. I'm not on the motion, but it's associated with the motion. But I heard Mr. Bayless commenting that perhaps people south of Hamilton are not getting their fair share in regards to mental health funding. Is there anything that the council can do requesting it or supporting the need of recognizing a needing and basically sending a letter to the powers to be for better consideration or reconsideration and how the money's allotted?
Your worship.
Yeah, I think we've opened the door for Mr. Bayless to advise us if there's something that we can do to help him. And certainly we have continuing dialogue. I know that Joanne Ferricioli has constant contact with Pastone, so she can continue that and further extend our offer. But he was talking in historical terms, which continue to this day. And certainly Niagara is now in a mode where we're trying to raise our voice to make sure that our needs are met. But if there are any requests that come forward, I'm quite confident that we'll be able to fulfill that.
Thank you.
Anything further to this issue? All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. So we'll move on to COS 04/2020, an amendment to rules of procedure bylaw regarding electronic meetings.
So moved, Chair.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Councillor McDermott. It was interesting that I've had a few residents, they're missing us. They would prefer us to be in the council chambers, and those that come and listen and just, granted, I won't say that the council chambers are ever full, but there's usually 3 or 4 regulars that come. And I think they kind of miss us. And I think we kind of miss that connection too with them. And although I'm in support of the recommendations here for illness and inclement weather and all that, I hope, I kind of miss being with all of you other than through Zoom. And I've had a few of the residents say too that it's just not the same. And I would agree with them. But again, I can understand that we do have the technology, and when things do get difficult or someone can't attend, that it's nice to have this option. So I am in support of it. And I'm glad that the staff is not recommending proxy voting, because I would not be in favor of proxy voting. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any more comments or questions on this one? Okay, seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. So our next report is EPS 03/2020, the proposed new open air burning bylaw to regulate open air burning in the town of Port Erie. Mover. Councillor Zanko. Comments or questions? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Councillor McDermott. I thought it was a very well-written report. I think there's a good balancing act here for those people who don't want it at all ever. You're never going to satisfy those individuals, but I think the timing and limiting the time and when it can start and when it should end, I think really goes a long way. And also the type of fire and how big it can be and things like that. I thought it was a good report. I can support it because I do think that many of us do enjoy having a small fire in our backyard and would hate to see that end. But I think it's a nice balance that he's achieved in that. So I would be in support of this.
Anything further, Councillor?
Nope.
Anybody else? Councillor Dubanow?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And through you to, I guess it would be the fire chief. I'm just curious from reading through the report with regard to the permit burns, which would be the ones out in the rural areas. The report states that we're going to now start charging for a permit of $80. And I'm just curious, how many of those a year do we typically have? And is this like a recurring thing? I'm just curious how it could financially impact residents.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor, we have 12 active burning permits of that type a year. This year we had 9. They generally are farms where there would be large piles of brush, etc. We've made a move over the last couple of years to try to recoup some of our costs, not all of our costs, but some of our costs. And by instituting a fire safety plan in there, and then a visit from the fire prevention staff, we thought that the $80 was a mild enough stipend, but help us recover our costs a little bit. But we're about 12 a year.
Okay. And if I may continue, Mr. Chair, just a quick comment. I want to echo the sentiment Councillor Noyes brought out about finding that balance and about the enjoyment that many Fort Erie residents have with the exempt fires, which would be your backyard bonfires. And I think it's actually one of the, for lack of a better word, cool things about our municipality is that we actually permit this. I'm concerned about some of the comments that I see, particularly driven on social media, about outlawing a lot of activities that are deemed to be unsafe or environmentally unfriendly, and I'm talking about fireworks in particular, but there's also been discussion about backyard fires. And I'm concerned that this could be a start of that discussion. And Mr. Chair, I just want to reach out through you, perhaps the fire chief might want to comment on this. I'm hoping that this is not a move to slowly wind this down, that we're just putting in some sensible regulations to help address some of the concerns residents have raised, but that this is going to continue to be something that Fort Erie residents, perhaps unique to Fort Erie, although I think Port Colborne came on recently, that this is something Fort Erie residents are going to continue to enjoy for many, many years with their families.
Chief?
Through you, Mr. Chair. We in no way are we looking at a total shutdown of what individuals would, let's put it as recreational activities. What we are looking for is, and I think it's been said, is a balance. We do have individuals, residents in our municipality that don't want burning at all. We have residents in our municipality that would like to hang their clothes out and don't want the smell or ash on them. So we've tried to find a balance. We've heard those residents. We've listened a lot. We've put a lot of social messaging out, which I think you can see in the decrease in number of burning complaints that we're getting. And we will continue to get the message out that we do allow it. We just want it to be fair and equitable when it comes to it for everyone in the municipality. And the fireworks bylaw that'll be coming forward in the next, I think it's next month, is the same. We're adding some, maybe a little bit of restriction to help with other residents' concerns, but we're not looking at outlawing or banning anything.
Thank you, Chief. Does that answer your question, Councillor Dubanow?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Kirk, for preparing the report. It was very well written, and I'm prepared to support it after getting these answers. Thank you.
Okay, any more comments on this issue? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Do we have any new business inquiries? Madam Clerk, you might do me a favor. When I printed my agenda out, I didn't print out the response to Mayor Redekop with regards to community gaming. Would you be so kind to read that for me?
Mr. Jansen has that to read out for
Okay, good. Thank you. Mr. Jansen?
Yes. So this is further to the inquiry by Mayor Redekop, August 24th. The nature was a request for clarification on how organizations were scored based on the services they provide to the community. The response is we were encouraged by both the OLG and the OCGA to allocate assignments based on the financial situation of the organization and community need. We were asked to defer organizations with a low priority to later in the year. Organizations were grouped into categories based on their use of lottery proceeds. Scores were then assigned to each grouping. For example, organizations that provide counseling services were considered a high priority, so received the score of 5. Schools were considered a low priority at present, so received a score of 1. All groupings and scoring are included in item 4 of the scoring sheet previously circulated. That's it.
Thank you. So are there any further inquiries? Thank you. Anything on the business status report? Any comments or questions? Thank you. So back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor McDermott. That takes us to scheduling of meetings. Any meetings scheduled forthcoming? Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. The Fort Erie Public Library Board is going to be having a meeting tomorrow. It's going to be done virtually through Zoom. I'm going to bring up my calendar really quickly. I have it listed here at 5:30. I'm sure if that's incorrect, I will be getting a text from the CEO of the library very quickly.
Right. Any other meetings? Just, I'll be attending the region on Friday morning for a joint signing of the declaration with respect to the Coalition of Inclusive Municipalities. You recall that we passed a resolution recently with respect to that. That's to take place Friday at 11 a.m. If there are no other meetings to be announced, then I'll ask someone to move that we adjourn. And I saw Councillor Dubanow's hand go up before I even started the question. Councillor Dubanow moves that we adjourn at, I've got 7:35, Councillor Dubanow,
That's what I have too, Your Worship.
to reconvene at regular council meeting next Monday, September 21st. Is that correct, Madam Clerk? We adjourn until
No,
next
we're in committee, so our next committee would be October 5th.
October the 5th. Okay, at 6 p.m. All those in favor? None opposed. That is unanimous. Thank you all.